Oh yeah, yeah. I'm not the type of brother to play with. See a lot of people acting like oh yeah. All ball players sounding like haters. We the young kings of this generation, oh yeah.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Pitch Side with Parker, back at it. How's everybody doing? How is quarantine going? As you can see from me, hair's getting a little long, but besides that, things are good. Soccer is back, so that makes everything a little bit better. I hope everybody's doing well. Back with another video today, and today what we're going to be doing is my first Arsenal video. Really excited about that, and it is a keep or sell. So the idea here is, if I were in charge of Arsenal, what would I do with every player in the first team squad? Would I keep them? Would I sell them in the summer? Definitely considering all these players' ages, contracts, wages. I think those are kind of the big things that we consider, as well as obviously form and just how I rate them as a player. I feel like this can give you guys a good sense of how I feel about the current Arsenal squad. I definitely have a lot of takes and a lot that I know people will disagree with a little bit. If you are an Arsenal fan and you're coming across this video, I will be making a lot more Arsenal videos. So if you're into Arsenal, you follow them, please subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you will not want to miss another video. And for those who may not be as inclined to Arsenal, I hope this can serve as an introduction to some of the members of the squad. And as always, like and subscribe, please, right now. Like the video before we even get too far into it. And if you're not already subscribed, subscribe to the channel. Come along for the ride. And let's get into it. So we'll start with the goalkeepers. Pretty simple category here because there's only two we really need to talk about. Bernd Leno and Emi Martinez. Leno is the starter, Martinez the backup. And I might be coming with a little bit of a controversial opinion to start here, which is that I would sell Bernd Leno. I don't think he's good enough for Arsenal. I think he's a little overrated on the whole. And if I were in charge, I would sell him. I think Leno is a really good shot stopper. That's clearly the top quality in his game. But when Unai Emery brought him in, he was brought in to be someone who could play out of the back a little bit better. And while I think he definitely has the composure to do it, I think his decision-making as far as his distribution is really poor. He definitely has some good performances in an Arsenal shirt, but to me, he's not good enough. And I think Arsenal fans rate him because the bar is pretty low in terms of recent history for Arsenal goalkeepers. I mean, you're looking at the likes of Szczesny, who was decent, but I feel like he's been better since he left Arsenal, and may cloud the judgment a little bit. We're talking about people like Almunia. We're talking about David Ospina. These are goalkeepers that the bar just hasn't been set very high at Arsenal. Ever since the days of Jans Lehmann and David Seaman, Arsenal hasn't had a top goalkeeper. And it has been one of the many factors that has contributed to Arsenal's kind of mediocrity at times over the past few years. So to me, he's not good enough. I would get in a better replacement. And as far as the backup is concerned, I like Emi Martinez. I thought he performed well in the cup games that Arsenal played this season. Definitely a solid backup, and I would keep him at the club. All right, on to the defenders. And the way I'm going to do the rest of these categories, it'll be defenders, midfielders, forwards, and we're going to start with must-sells and must-keeps. And for all these categories, there really aren't a whole lot of must do one thing or the other, because Arsenal's squad is just very middling in a lot of positions. They don't really have top tier talent at a lot of positions, and the few that are there, I think, are people that you would consider selling. So that's why there aren't a lot of these. But for defenders, I think there's one big must sell at Arsenal, and to me, that's Shkodran Mustafi. He's just made too many mistakes. It's a running joke on Twitter. I mean, the guy, he's a lovable guy. He's great in the locker room, but he just isn't good enough for Arsenal. He makes way too many mental errors. Sell him, get rid of him. You get 5 million, 10 million, 50, doesn't matter. Get rid of him. And then as far as must keeps, again, we all know how shaky the Arsenal backline is. So there's not a lot of those either. But for me, the two must keeps are Kieran Tierney, because he is a young, very, very talented fullback. It's not great how injury prone he is, but we can hope that this quarantine break will help get him back to fitness. And when he has started for Arsenal, he has looked very, very good. I mean, his deliveries from the left are awesome. So definitely one I would keep for the long term. And then this might be a little controversial, but I think Arsenal should keep David Luiz. And I think that is a must keep for Arsenal. I say that because he only has 1 year left on his deal after this season. He has been one of the few that has held Arsenal together, and I would say he has put in more good performances than the rest of the Arsenal back line across the year. That being said, he's also had some shockers. But again, this is the Arsenal defense we're talking about, so the bar is kind of low, and I think you need to keep Luiz around to have that experience, especially when there's going to be a lot of young players coming through over the next couple of seasons. So beyond those, we'll kind of run through the rest of the defenders. To me, Sead Kolasinac, left back, I think you got to keep him. With the attacking style that we're going to see under Mikel Arteta, and hopefully Bukayo Saka moving away from left back, we're going to need depth there. And if for no other reason, his defensive Mesut Ozil, you have to respect it. Beyond that, I think you keep the 2 young English center backs, Rob Holding, Callum Chambers. I don't really have faith that either one of them is good enough to become a regular starter. That being said, you need to keep as many English players as possible in the squad just for the homegrown requirement. And also those 2 guys are going to be really solid depth pieces, and especially in the case of Chambers, very versatile across the back line. Now, another one that's very controversial here, I think if possible, you want to sell Sokratis. At times, he has also looked like the best defender this season, along with David Luiz, but another player that is very inconsistent. And one of the things that concerns me is he's not good playing out of the back with his feet. Seems like something that Mikel Arteta wants to encourage, and I don't know that he is a fit for the future of Arsenal. I think ultimately you're going to have to get rid of a couple of these center backs. For me, Mustafi and Sokratis gotta go. Sokratis has a year left on his deal, and I think he might fetch the most money out of any of Arsenal's center backs. So if I was in charge, I think you get him out of there and prioritize bringing in a new center back. And then a couple more players to go over. Hector Bellerin, that is a player that is very, very popular in Arsenal. But for me, Bellerin, if you could get a good deal for him, I would move him on as well. I know that is probably something that a lot of Arsenal fans would not like to hear. And it's something I definitely don't expect to happen because he is Arsenal through and through. He's potential captain material, but the man just can't stay fit. This is not 2015, 2016. If I was in control, I would sell him and see what you can get for him on the market because he's still a young player. I think you could, pitch him to another team and they would be willing to shell out 20, 25 million, 30 million for Bellerin. And then a couple of new purchases, again, down the depth chart a little bit, but Pablo Mari and Cedric Suarez, who were both defenders that Arsenal brought in during the winter transfer deadline, and we really haven't seen play much at all. You keep those 2. I think good squad depth, if nothing else. So we move to the midfield. This is an area where I think actually is the worst unit at Arsenal. Yes, the defense is shocking. But I think a big part of why Arsenal's defense has been so bad over the past few years is that they don't get a whole lot of help from the midfield. I mean, you can get past these guys very quickly. When you're playing Granit Xhaka, Matteo Guendouzi, Dani Ceballos, these guys are not providing much of a shell in front of that back line. So must-keeps for me, I think Lucas Torreira has to say. We've seen great flashes from him. He's struggled a little bit to adapt to the English game just in terms of his physical ability as a rather small player, and he's been injured a little bit, but I think on his day, he's the best defensive midfielder at Arsenal, and you need that rock to really solidify the team. Another one that must stay for me is Joe Willock. To me, Willock is the most exciting young center mid at Arsenal, and yes, that includes Guendouzi. I think Willock has the potential to be a phenomenal attacking mid. From what I've seen from him, he loves to drive forward. He's got that extra goal in his game. Much different player than Guendouzi, but I think those 2 could really be the future of the Arsenal midfield. And for me, Willock must keep for Arsenal. Guendouzi, on the other hand, I think is also a keep for Arsenal. But from the sound of things and what I've read online, he is rated very high across Europe. And if there was a team that came in with a $50 million offer, I'd go ahead and get him out the door. I definitely think he has a lot of potential, but Guendouzi is shaky at times. When he plays against top 6 teams, they target him. Manchester City targeted him. Liverpool targeted him. They know that that's a player they can beat. He's a very good passer, and he's incredibly composed for his age, but I think he's got a lot of work to do. However, I would keep him at Arsenal unless a big offer came in. Maitland-Niles, I'm throwing into the midfield here. I don't know what his role is at Arsenal anymore. He used to be a right back. He said he wants to play at center mid. Seems like Arteta doesn't rate him too highly, and neither did Unai Emery. For me, I have to say, Maitland-Niles, I think it's time to move on. Arsenal through and through, love the guy, but I wish to see him in a better situation, and I think he's got to do that at another club. So that's a sell for me. And then going down the list, couple more midfielders to go through. Xhaka. Now this is a very controversial one because I was among the many Arsenal fans up in arms after his actions against Crystal Palace in the fall, where he told the fans to F off, threw the captain's armband off, threw his shirt off, walked away to the tunnel. At that point, I thought Xhaka was not Arsenal material. You can't be a captain and display that type of disrespect to the fans, to the badge, to your teammates. But I have to give him credit. He has fought for his spot since then. And under Arteta, he's one of Arsenal's best players, I think, across the board. If you look at the last couple months that they played before quarantine. I'm not a huge fan of Xhaka, but I think he's earned the right to stay because he fought for his spot so carefully. I definitely would never make him captain again, but you have to respect what he's done on the field. Now, Dani Ceballos. So Ceballos is on loan from Real Madrid, and this is what he reminds me of. Imagine you're a parent, and your daughter brings over her boyfriend for the first time, and he has this nice face on. You know, he's saying all the right things. He's being very friendly. He's got a nice smile, but there just seems like you know what he's in it for. He doesn't have the greatest intentions with your daughter, and anytime that's the case, whether you have evidence of it or not, you're probably going to be suspicious of this person. That's how I feel about Dani Ceballos. I feel like he is putting on a show. He's clearly only here to try to impress Madrid, and to me, you got to get him out of there. Send him back to the Spanish capital. He doesn't have a place at Arsenal for me. And last but not least, my very favorite, Mesut Ozil. For as much as I love and adore Ozil, I mean, he is one of my favorite players ever to watch. On his day, again, he is a creative genius, a generational playmaker, in my opinion. But with that being said, I am smart and objective enough to realize that his performances have not been good enough for Arsenal. He doesn't do it at away games. He doesn't do it against the top clubs. And it's understandable when he's being paid $350,000 a week. The second closest is Aubameyang at $200,000 a week, and he earns every penny of that. He's just being overpaid. But that's the issue here. You can't really sell him because no team wants to pay his wages. And realistically, how much even would a less wage Mesut Ozil call for on the market? I would say, 15, 20 million, maybe a little higher on that depending on where he goes, just for the marketing value of what he brings to a team. But if I'm Arsenal, I think you just got to, at this point, cut your losses, run down the contract, and let him go on a free after next summer when his contract expires. The forwards. This is a unit at Arsenal that probably of all of them has the most promise. In terms of must-keeps, Nicolas Pepe, love him. I think he took a little time to adjust, but that was to be expected. Turned out great. I think he's been performing well, and I can't wait to continue to see how he grows for Arsenal. Gabriel Martinelli and Eddie Nketiah. These two are the future of Arsenal's front line for sure, along with Bukayo Saka. And I think those three are must-keeps for Arsenal. You can't let them go too early. I think they could all develop into really, really good players. I think Martinelli and Saka have the potential to be world-class players. And then as far as must-sells, this is where things get tricky. It all comes down to what you think of Aubameyang and Lacazette, the powerful duo. The two that we all love. They bring so much personality to the team, so many goals to the team. And then as time has gone on, it's dropped off a little bit. Aubameyang certainly hasn't slowed down, but Lacazette in particular, really slow over the past season. And to me, I think a lot of that can be put on Unai Emery. I think his tactics were bad. They certainly did not fit Lacazette. He's not built to press for 90 minutes. It's not what he does. And I think at times the goals dried up. But some of that was his fault as well. And ultimately, I think Lacazette is the most expendable player here. When it comes down to him versus Aubameyang, it's been showed time over time that you can't keep them both. You can't play them both in the same team. Emery could never figure it out. Arteta hasn't been able to figure it out this far. And playing Aubameyang on the left wing is a waste. If you put him at central striker, he's going to score 30 goals this season, and he's going to lead the team. I'm confident he could do that for at least a few more years. I think if you're Arsenal, sign him to a new contract and let Lacazette go. get what you can for Lacazette, and put the faith of the backup role in Eddie Nketiah, Gabriel Martinelli. Beyond them, not a lot of players left. As I said, Xhaka for me, easily my favorite player this season for Arsenal. He's a must-keep for me. Get him to sign that contract immediately. Post-haste, as soon as possible. Stan Kroenke, you're not going to watch this video, but oh my God, he needs to be locked down. If he goes to Liverpool, I don't even know what I would do. I would lose it. I would absolutely lose it. He is the future of the club. If we can keep him, Arsenal will be in a much better place. And lastly, another youngster, Reiss Nelson. A lot of people online really like Nelson. They think he's kind of up with that crop of youngsters, Martinelli, Saka, and Nketiah, Guendouzi. For me, he's not quite up to sniff. He's already spent some time in the Bundesliga, and he got figured out really quick. To me, he reminded me of kind of a younger Iwobi, where he has a little bit of quality on the ball, and the pace is there at times, but he just can't really put it all together. Hopefully, Nelson could command a little bit on the market, and sell him for what you can, and keep the rest of the youngsters. Now, there's a couple loan players that you should not forget about if you're an Arsenal fan. There's two center backs. One is Dinos Mavropanos. I don't think he's all that great, but he's having a pretty good season at Nuremberg. So when he comes back to Arsenal, we'll see what he can give. The other center back, William Saliba. Now, it already feels like there's just an immense amount of pressure on Saliba. It's dangerous as an Arsenal fan. You don't want to hype up these youngsters too much, but I have only heard raving reviews about what Saliba can do. I've seen some highlights of his play at Saint Etienne, and he looks like a brick wall in the back. He's been called the Mbappe of center backs, and I cannot wait to get him at the Emirates. I hope he can be that player to provide some consistency, maybe learn, for a year or two under Luiz, under Holding, Chambers, these guys that I would keep around at least, and whoever else may be around. And then hopefully ease his way into the squad and become a real stronghold in that Arsenal back line. And a few other players that are out on loan. El Neni, I think you got to cut the ties there. Smith Rowe is an exciting youngster. I say bring him back, see what he can do. And last but not least, Henrik Mkhitaryan. People forget he's still contracted to Arsenal. Mkhitaryan is still in the top 5 in Arsenal on the wage bill. And I don't know exactly what percentage Roma is paying versus Arsenal right now, but just the fact that how big his contract is and how little value I feel like he can provide to Arsenal at this point, cut ties with him as soon as possible as well, as the last player out on the loan list. So yeah, that was a long video. Thank you for those who stay around for all of it. That's my opinions on the entire Arsenal squad. And it's a lot of players, and I feel like this is a group of players that, unfortunately, right now, if you look at the level of talent in the squad, I said this to a few of my friends this season, I'm not that surprised that Arsenal is where they were in the table. They enter quarantine 9th in the table when they restart games, and we're down near 10th, 13th, 16th, all down in there this season. And a lot of the blame goes on to Emery, but realistically, this squad is not a top 6 squad in the Premier League. If you look at the talent of the players, it's right on that 6, 7, 8 fringe to me in terms of talent. And that is why some of these players like Leno, some of these players like Socrates, some of these players like Lacazette, big names that I would sell because personally they are not good enough. And if they can command a little bit of value, you should get them out, promote the young players, and sign some splash players. Sign some players that are really, truly top 4 in quality. If that is your goal, Arsenal needs to do better. The squad is not good enough right now. And I think that's a big reason for where Arsenal are at in the league. So give me your thoughts. Let me know if you think I made some mistakes, if you feel like I'm being a little too harsh on some of these guys, too light on some of these guys. Everybody kind of has their own takes, but I wanted to at least get mine out there as a big Arsenal fan and somebody who I imagine will make a lot of videos about this team, so I can kind of use this as a reference point. But again, thanks so much for watching. It's been fun, and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and continue coming back for more great content. See you in the next one. Peace.